First off, so I'm going to use this clip of me, and first off, if you just click and drag a clip and make a composition with it, it's the most convenient way to quickly make a new composition because you don't really have to do any thought. So I'm just going to do that. But there is a problem with it. If I right click and go to composition settings, the width is 1080 and the height is 1920. So after I do all this Keylight effect to it and make myself transparent, I'll probably have to make a new composition and drag this composition within it, because this isn't the way YouTube or TVs view movies. Yeah. Let me just quickly show you what the difference would be. So I'm going to say new composition. I just clicked that little tab there, and now I'm going to do width 1920 by 1080. And I like doing that because I like to see kind of these details here. So now I have this new composition. It gives it an actual name, comp1. I'm going to call this like Tyson Dance. And then I'm going to drag in my clip, and you'll see it's kind of a pain to work with, but it will be, I think, better in the long run. So this clip does continue up on above. Here, we can just scale this down. So hit S, scale it down. And now we're like kind of working within the space that we want to end up with rather than having that really vertical space. So I just masked out the extra background stuff just by clicking that layer and choosing the rectangle and clicking and dragging. Look up your Keylight. I'm going to click and drag that onto the clip. And then you have this screen color over here. It's easiest to click that eyedropper tool and click that eyedropper. And we can see like some of you noticed like, oh, the black pants were blending in. If the person kind of fades into this black background, you can turn on this little toggle transparency grid, which I think is super helpful. And it shows you what is actually transparent and what is opaque. So for the most part, I'm opaque and the background is mostly transparent, but not quite. I'll turn that off for a second. So the best thing to do is once you choose your screen color is to look at your screen matte. And this gives you that specific data of what's transparent and what is opaque. And we can see that I'm kind of fuzzy like gray and the background has a lot of white in it. And I want that background to be black and me to be white. So with that screen matte enabled, open up your screen matte settings and just increase the black value. And we can see a lot of that white that was in the background is disappearing. And then if I drop this white value, I don't want to drop it so much that I start getting like jagged edges, but I just want to drop it enough that I lose that that gray. So I'll just turn it down to that point and it looks good. So if we just leave it on this screen matte, we're actually pretty close to the result we want. Notice we have this like white character on this black background. So if I just make a new solid and give it that color, take it to the background, we have this, and I can just set the blend mode to add. And all of a sudden we have yeah. Okay, so one other little trick you can do, let's say you don't want this solid character. Instead of using screen matte, there's this thing called color correction edges, and this is like super, it's not very user friendly, but as you can see, we can see that it's kind of tracing me a little bit. Yeah.
What's that?
So instead of screen matte, just look one notch above it, and it'll do color correction edges. And I'm going to turn my blend mode back to normal. And so now there's a little edge. And instead of looking in the screen matte tab, if we go to edge color correction, this is where it becomes not so user friendly. So there's a few things you have to do. First, you want to enable the color correction checkbox. So now I have the option to mess with these parameters. And then logically I'd think, oh, I just want to do edge grow. And if I drag up this edge grow, the edge does not grow. And for some reason, you have to first give it some contrast. So like, let's just give it a contrast of 1. Now the edge grow actually does something. So that's where yeah, just make sure you give it some value in the contrast. It can't be 0 or it won't work at all. So we give it 1, and then I can make this edge grow as much or as little as I want. And then I can set it back to blend mode of add. And let's see. So that's kind of one way that they did an effect. Notice sometimes that you see the character duplicated a bunch, so just duplicate that layer, you know, drag them over. Yeah, so you guys can take it from there, and we'll check back quick because it's pretty cool. So let's say you've had your fun with the edges. If you go back to screen mat, and we'll leave it set to add, but this is the point where things can be tweaked a lot. So you have your Keylight on. Let's give this an effect called tint. And I'm going to drop this on. So now, and I'm going to hide my background just for the time being. So now, instead of white, I'm going to make it, let's try, the colors of the rainbow, they all add up to make white. And I think in like photography, it's magenta, cyan, and anybody know the other one? I don't know. So let's just try whatever that color is. And if I turn on the background, it just looks white because it's like adding so much value over that yellow. So I'm going to maybe turn that down a bit. But now I can like duplicate this layer and offset it. And maybe I'll make this duplicate like more of the blue and duplicate that. And then duplicate this layer and make this more of the red. Wait, we already had more of the like yellow. And now you get something kind of cool looking as well. And maybe they're offset a little too much. But this is another way that blending modes can be pretty cool. And let's change this background. If you have a solid color and you want to change the solid, go to Layer, Solid Settings, and I'll just make this like dark. Oops. Could be darker. Not sure why it's switching back to that. Let me try that one more time.
You have to press OK afterwards.
Was I hitting cancel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So that looks, I mean, it gives it a cooler, and then last thing, like by default the phone shoots in 30 frames per second, and I can like really see that. I mean, I think adding some film grain would help, but like to me that smoothness just looks like amateur, and there isn't much of a way around that. But one thing I'm going to do is all that like work I did for making those extra layers, I'm going to select them all, go to Layer, Pre-Compose, which is going to flatten them all into one thing. I can adjust them later and move all attributes into new composition. So now I have this pre-comp where there's me, right? But in the previous one, there's this like this pre-comp right here. I'll set that to add again. And a cool effect is called posterize time. And like maybe the frame rate I'll set to like 15. So now it's like choppier. I don't know if you guys, you know, I mean, you can set it to like 6. And then it like is really choppy, but it kind of masks the feeling that, oh, this was just somebody's like cell phone video. Yeah, so that's cool. Add some film grain, and you know, you can also add something on top of this. Let's just make this the edges again. Set it to like subtract. See ya. So then, I mean, that's actually pretty awesome. The pre-composed layer has this posterized time. The edge layer does not. So we just accidentally made something kind of cool. which I think happens a lot with art. That's art.